The stars burned above Earth on the day humanity learned what true horror meant. Admiral Marcus Webb stood on the observation deck of the UN's Defiance, watching the blue marble of Earth rotate peacefully below. He had served in the United Human Navy for 32 years. He had fought pirates in the outer colonies, negotiated peace treaties with 3 alien species, and watched his daughter graduate from the academy just 6 months ago. His wife, Maria, worked as a doctor in Apollo. His son taught children on the lunar colonies. Life was good. Humanity had spread across 47 star systems, building homes and futures among the stars. The warning came at 0600 hours ship time. A junior officer named Chen reported massive gravitational anomalies at the edge of the solar system. Webb ordered a full scan. What they found made his blood run cold. 347 ships, massive vessels, each one the size of a small city. They appeared from faster-than-light travel in perfect formation, arranged like a net closing around Earth in her closest colonies. The design was unlike anything in the human database. Angular, predatory, covered in what looked like dark armor that seemed to drink in light itself. Webb tried to hail them. Standard first contact protocols, 17 different languages, mathematical proofs, even music. Nothing. The alien fleet ignored every attempt at communication and continued their approach. Their trajectory calculations showed they would reach Earth in 6 hours. The Defiance was not a warship designed for this. She was a patrol cruiser meant to chase smugglers and respond to distress calls. Webb knew this with terrible certainty as he watched those massive ships approach. He ordered an emergency transmission to Earth Defense Command and began evacuating civilian stations in their path. That was when the first shots came. No warning, no demands, no declaration of war. The alien ship simply opened fire on Orbital Station 7, a research facility housing 4,000 scientists and their families. The station exploded in a ball of white fire that lit up Webb's view screen. 4,000 people gone in 3 seconds. The aliens. Humanity would later learn they called themselves the Critian Hegemony. Had come for one purpose: extermination. Earth Defense Command scrambled every ship they had. 112 vessels of various sizes rose to meet the threat. The battle lasted 40 minutes. Humanity lost 98 ships. The Critians lost 2. Their weapons cut through human shields like they were made of paper. Their armor shrugged off human missiles like raindrops. But the ships were not the real attack. They were just the beginning. Commander Sarah Chen watched from the bridge of the UN's Beijing as the Critian fleet deployed their true weapons. Massive cylinders, each one 100 meters long, dropped from the belly of their largest ships. They fell toward Earth like judgment from an angry god. Sarah understood what they were instantly. Kinetic bombardment weapons, simple, brutal, and unstoppable. The first one hit the Pacific Ocean. The resulting tsunami wiped out coastal cities on 4 continents. The second hit Moscow. The third hit Beijing, the city Sarah had been born in, where her parents still lived. The fourth hit New York. The fifth hit Tokyo. The sixth hit Mumbai. They kept falling. 30, 40, 50 impacts, each one releasing the energy of multiple nuclear weapons. Sarah's voice broke as she tried to give orders. Her hands shook on the controls. Below, the planet that had birthed humanity was being murdered before her eyes. The calm channels filled with screams, pleas for help, final goodbyes. She heard her mother's voice in the chaos just for a moment, calling her name, then static. The other colonies did not fare better. Mars Base Delta went dark after 3 Korean ships surrounded the planet. New Beijing Colony, humanity's proudest achievement in the Shisur Pentis system, sent one final transmission. It was video. Crithian soldiers, massive creatures standing nearly 3 meters tall, with 4 arms and faces like nightmares, moved through the colony corridors, killing every human they found. Men, women, children. It did not matter. The video ended with a Crithian warrior staring directly into the camera. Its mouth opened in what might have been a smile, revealing rows of crystalline teeth. Then the feed cut out. In 72 hours, 18 billion humans died. The Galactic Council, humanity had learned of its existence only 15 years ago, held an emergency session. Humanity sent desperate pleas for help. They sent evidence of the genocide. They sent the coordinates of refugee ships fleeing into deep space. Surely the Council would intervene. Surely the civilized species of the galaxy would stop this. Ambassador Elena Vulov presented humanity's case to the Council. She showed them the death tolls. She showed them footage of children dying in the ruins of their homes. She begged, she wept, she demanded justice. The Council deliberated for 6 hours. Then they voted. The result was unanimous. Non-inference. The Council's official position, read by an insectoid creature called Athol, was clear and cold. The Cranian hegemony has acted within their rights under natural law. Species compete. The strong survive. The weak perish. This is the way of the universe. The Council will not interfere in natural selection events. Elena collapsed. One of the younger diplomats, a man named Torres, shouted at the Council. He called them cowards. He promised they would regret this. Security removed him from the chamber. The Council moved on to discuss trade regulations. Humanity was alone. Admiral Webb regrouped what remained of the human fleet at a hidden station in the asteroid belt. 57 ships, maybe 30,000 personnel, against 347 Critian vessels. The math was simple and brutal. Humanity could not win a straight fight. In the wreckage-strewn orbit of Mars, the Remnant Council formed. 7 humans who had survived the initial attack and still had the authority to make decisions. Admiral Webb was one. Dr. Ko Yamada, a brilliant xenobiologist, was another. Chenjo, formerly an ethics officer in the Navy, brought his tactical mind. There was General Oktoy, who had lost her entire battalion on Earth. There was Director Park, who ran what was left of human intelligence services. There was Captain Reeves, the youngest member, who commanded a destroyer that had somehow survived. And there was Scholar Singh, an old man who had spent his life studying alien cultures and now understood they were all complicit in humanity's death. They met in a bare conference room on a damaged station. The lights flickered. The air tasted of recycled fear. They sat around a table and looked at each other with hollow eyes. Park spoke first. We cannot win, not conventionally. They outgun us, outman us, and have the implicit support of the entire galaxy. If we continue fighting as we have been, humanity will be extinct in 6 months. Okoye slammed her fist on the table. Then we make them pay for every human life. We fight until the last ship burns. Noble, Chen Xiao said quietly. Pointless, but noble. We need to think differently. Singh nodded slowly. The Koreans believe they are superior. They see us as pests. The galaxy agrees. We are weak in their eyes, are we? Dr. Yamada asked. Her voice was steady, but her eyes held something dark and new. Weak? We put aside our weapons of mass destruction centuries ago. We banned bowfare. We agreed to ethical limitations on warfare. We did these things because we thought they made us civilized. They did, Captain Reeves said. Did they? Yamada looked around the table. Or did they make us vulnerable? The Critians have no such limitations. They came to our home and murdered 18 billion of us without a second thought. And the galaxy calls this natural. They say, might makes right. Admiral Webb felt something cold settle in his chest. He knew where this was going. He wanted to stop it. He wanted to stand up and say no, that there had to be another way. But he thought of Maria, buried under the rubble of S. Paulo. He thought of his son, who had been on Lunar Colony 7 when it was destroyed. He thought of 18 billion dead humans, who had died begging for mercy that never came. What are you suggesting? He asked, though he already knew. Dr. Yamada opened her tablet. Files appeared on the conference room screen. Blueprints, chemical formulas, biological sequences, weapon designs that humanity had locked away and sworn never to use. We have research, she said, centuries of it. We know things about biology, about chemistry, about physics, that we never weaponized because we thought we were better than that. We have the knowledge to create horrors that would make the ancient wars look like children playing. That is insane, Reeves said, but her voice lacked conviction. Is it? Chen Zhao leaned forward. The Critians wanted to teach us about natural selection, about survival of the fittest. I say we become such good students that they regret ever starting the lesson. Singh closed his eyes. If we do this, we cross a line. We become something we cannot come back from. What choice do we have? Okoye asked. Die with our morals intact. Let our species go extinct because we were too ethical to fight dirty. The debate went on for hours. They discussed alternatives, guerrilla warfare, diplomatic solutions, appealing again to the Galactic Council. Every option led to the same conclusion: human extinction. The Krydians would not stop until every last human was dead. They had said as much in their only communication, a recorded message from their leader, War Prime Thulkar. Webb had listened to that message 100 times. The Krydian leader's voice was deep and cold. You begged for mercy. Your weakness disgusts us. Be grateful your extinction will be swift. You are a mistake the universe made. We are simply correcting it. Now, sitting in that conference room, Webb made his choice. It was not noble. It was not heroic. It was the choice of a father who had lost his children, and a soldier who understood that sometimes survival demanded terrible prices. We vote, he said. Do we die as humans or survive as monsters? The vote was not unanimous. Captain Reeves abstained. Scholar Singh voted no. The other 5 voted yes. Chen Xiao outlined the plan they would later call Project Wendigo, named after an ancient Earth legend about humans who became monsters. They would abandon the Geneva Convention, the covenant of civilized warfare, every treaty and moral guideline humanity had ever written. They would use every weapon, every tactic, every nightmare tool in humanity's vast knowledge base. They would become what the Krydians feared most. Dr. Yamada would lead biological warfare research. Park would coordinate intelligence and special operations. Okoye would train a new kind of soldier. Chen would write a new doctrine of war, one where mercy was a weakness and terror was a tool. Webb would command what remained of the fleet and make the impossible decisions. Before they adjourned, Webb recorded a message. It would be broadcast to every surviving human, every refugee ship, every hidden colony. He chose his words carefully. This is Admiral Marcus Webb of the United Human Navy. 72 hours ago, the Kryan hegemony attacked Earth and our colonies. 18 billion of us are dead. The Galactic Council has refused to help. We stand alone in a universe that sees us as weak, as worthy of extinction. They are wrong. Humanity survived ice ages and plagues. We survived world wars and near-extinction events. We survived because we adapt, because we do whatever we must to protect our own. The Krydians think they have beaten us. They think we will die quietly. They have made a mistake. We are initiating Project Wendigo. I will not lie to you about what this means. We are about to do things that will horrify you. We will use weapons we swore we never would. We will cross lines we thought sacred. We will become the monsters hiding in the dark places of human history. But we will survive. And the Koreans will learn what happens when you back a human into a corner. They wanted to teach us about natural selection. We will show them that humanity is the apex predator they should have feared from the beginning. To any Korean listening to this, you wanted monsters. You will get them. We are coming, and we will show you what real terror looks like. Webb ended the recording. Around the table, the remnant council sat in silence. They had just damned themselves and possibly saved their species. History would judge them harshly if there was anyone left to write that history. Captain Reeves finally spoke. God help us, God. Jen Xiao smiled, but there was no warmth in it. God abandoned us when the first kinetic weapon fell on Earth. We are beyond his mercy now. We have only our will to survive and our capacity for cruelty. That will have to be enough. They left the conference room and began the work of transforming humanity from victims into the galaxy's worst nightmare. In hidden stations across dead star systems, in research facilities buried in asteroids, in the cold dark between stars, humanity began its descent into necessary evil. The Krydians celebrated their victory. They had eliminated another primitive species and strengthened the galaxy through natural selection. Warp Prime Tholer received commendations from the hegemony leadership. He began planning to colonize Earth's ruins. He did not know that humanity was sharpening its knives in the dark. He did not know that he had awakened something ancient and terrible in the human soul. He did not know that his species had just made the worst mistake in their long history. He would learn. They all would. 6 months after Earth burned, Dr. Ko Yamada stood in a laboratory that did not officially exist. The facility was buried inside an asteroid in a system with no name, just a catalog number that meant nothing to anyone. The walls were sterile white. The equipment hummed quietly. Everything looked clean and professional. It was the kind of place where good science happened. Ko was not doing good science. She looked at the sealed containment unit in front of her. Inside was her greatest achievement in her damnation, a virus. She had named it Reaper because that was what it did. It harvested Krydian lives with terrible efficiency. The Krydian physiology had taken 3 months to fully understand. Their biology was complex, built on silicon-carbon hybrid chains that should not exist, but did. They were tough, resistant to most human diseases, and could survive in environments that would kill a human in minutes. But they had weaknesses. Everything did. You just had to look hard enough and be willing to exploit what you found without mercy. Reaper targeted the cryon neural system. It started in the respiratory tract, spread to the bloodstream, and then crossed into neural tissue. The first symptoms appeared within 12 hours. Confusion, mild tremors. By day 2, the infected Krytan would experience cascading system failures. Their forearms would lose coordination. Their vision would blur and twist, showing them horrors that were not there. By day 3, every nerve in their body would fire at once, again and again, until their brain shut down from overload. It was not a clean death. It was not merciful. Infected Krydians would suffer for 3 days before dying. Ko had designed it that way on purpose. She wanted them to be afraid. She wanted other Kryts to watch their comrades die screaming, and know terror. She had been a doctor once. She had taken an oath to do no harm. Now she spent her days creating weapons that would make ancient plagues look gentle. Her assistant, a young man named David, approached with a tablet. "Doctor, the test results from the modified strain are ready." Koei took the tablet. The data showed that Reaper Mark I was 40% more infectious than the original. It could survive in vacuum for up to 18 hours, meaning it could be deployed from orbit. The incubation period was shorter, symptoms more severe. It was better at killing. "Excellent work," she said. Her voice was steady, professional inside. A part of her that remembered being human was screaming. She thought about her daughter sometimes. Hana had been 7 years old living with Ko's ex-husband in the Tokyo Arcology. When the Krydian kinetic weapons fell, the Arcology had collapsed in seconds. 2 million people, including Hana, buried alive or crushed instantly. Ko had not been there. She had been on a research station studying benign alien microorganisms, trying to advance humanity's understanding of life in the universe. Now, she used that knowledge to create death. She approved the Mark II strain and moved on to the next project. Reaper was just one weapon in humanity's growing arsenal. She had 17 other bioweapons in various stages of development. Some attacked cryon immune systems, others caused organ failure. One particularly nasty creation induced a state similar to rabies, causing infected Krydians to become violent and attack their own kind before dying. In another section of the facility, her colleague Dr. Doromesh worked on chemical agents, compounds that would make cryon worlds uninhabitable, gases that would kill slowly and painfully, acids that could be seeded into water supplies. They had abandoned the rules of warfare because the Krydians had shown them those rules only applied if both sides followed them. Ko returned to her quarters that night and sat at her desk. She kept a private journal, something she had been told not to do for security reasons. She did not care. If humanity survived this, someone needed to remember what they had done and what it had cost. She wrote, "I have become a monster. I create weapons that would make the worst humans in history weep with envy. Chemical Alley, Unit 731. Every evil scientist who ever lived has nothing on what I am doing now. And the worst part, I am good at it. I understand how to hurt, how to kill, how to create suffering on an industrial scale. God forgive me. But even as I ask for forgiveness, I know I would do it all again. Because somewhere out there, a cryon child might grow up to help finish the genocide they started. And I will not let that happen. We will survive no matter the cost to our souls." While co-designed plagues, Chino built a new kind of warfare in the training facilities scattered across hidden stations. He stood in an observation room, watching 50 volunteers go through modifications that would change them forever. The Reaver program was Chen's creation. He had looked at the Krytians and seen the truth. Humans could not beat them one-on-one. Krytians were bigger, stronger, tougher. So Chen decided to make humans into something worse. The volunteers were screened carefully. They had to pass psychological tests, proving they could do what was necessary. Most were soldiers who had watched their units die. Some were civilians who had lost everything. All of them had one thing in common. They wanted revenge more than they wanted to stay human. The modifications were extensive. Enhanced muscles grown from accelerated cloning techniques, subdermal armor made from graphene weave, neural implants that increased reaction time and removed the biological limiters that stopped humans from using their full strength, ocular enhancements that let them see in darkness and track fast-moving targets, chemical glands that could flood their system with combat stimulants on demand. But the physical changes were just the beginning. The psychological conditioning was what truly created Reavers. Over 6 months, volunteers underwent a process that systematically removed empathy, fear, and hesitation. They were shown footage of Krytian atrocities, over and over, until rage became their default emotion. They were trained to see Krytians, not as sentient beings, but as targets. They learned to kill efficiently, creatively, and without remorse. Chen watched as Reaver Candidate 047, formerly Corporal Anderson, went through a combat simulation. The candidate moved with inhuman speed and precision. When presented with a holographic Kryton, the candidate attacked with brutal efficiency. Throat strike to crush the windpipe, leg sweep to drop the target, stomp to the head to finish it. 3 seconds, 1 dead crit. The candidate was then presented with a holographic CN child. In the old days, a human soldier would hesitate, might even refuse to engage a child. Candidate 047 killed it in 2 seconds. No hesitation, no remorse visible on the biometric readouts. Subject shows optimal conditioning, the technician reported. Empathy response nearly flat. Aggression levels within acceptable parameters. Recommend approval for field deployment. Chen approved it. Candidate 047 became Reaver 047 and joined the growing force of humans who were no longer entirely human. Chen tried not to think about what they were creating. Soldiers who could not be reasoned with, who felt no mercy, who existed only to kill after the war, if humanity won. What would they do with 50,000 psychologically conditioned killers? That was a problem for later. If there was a later, Chen's doctrine, which he had titled Scorched Void, laid out humanity's new approach to warfare. No more honorable combat, no more proportional response, no more protecting civilians. The Corinthians had shown them that mercy was weakness. Chen's doctrine embraced every dirty trick, every war crime, every atrocity that humans had ever conceived, and then invented new ones. Hit enemy supply lines with bow weapons, destroy agricultural worlds to create famines, poison water sources, bomb civilian centers to break morale, take no prisoners, or worse, torture prisoners, and send them back as warnings. Use psychological warfare to make the enemy afraid of the dark. Make every battle so costly that the enemy would lose the will to fight. It was evil. Chen knew it was evil. He had spent 20 years as an ethics officer, preaching about the importance of moral warfare. Now he wrote manuals on how to maximize suffering. Admiral Marcus Webb implemented Chen's doctrine with grim determination. The remaining human fleet now reinforced with ships built in hidden shipyards, prepared for a new kind of war. These were not the elegant vessels of the old Navy. These were predator ships, designed for stealth and deadly strikes. Webb stood on the bridge of the Revenge, a new class of destroyer, built specifically for Project Wendigo. The ship was painted black, equipped with the best stealth technology humanity could develop. Its weapons were simple missiles tipped with bow weapons, kinetic impactors for orbital strikes, and railguns for ship-to-ship combat. It was not meant to fight fair. It was meant to kill from the shadows and disappear. Admiral, we have positive identification on the target, his tactical officer reported. Krytian supply convoy, 3 freighters with light escort. They are on approach to forward base Krithal. Webb looked at the display. 12 ships total, probably carrying food, weapons, and equipment for the Kryan forces occupying former human colonies. Standard convoy. In the old days, Attacking supply ships would have been controversial. Now it was just another target. Weapon status. Reaper Mark I missiles loaded and ready. We have firing solutions on all 12 targets. Fire. The Revenge shuddered slightly as 12 missiles launched. They were not explosive. Each warhead contained aerosol dispersal systems loaded with KO's virus. The missiles would penetrate the target ships, release their payload, and infect every Cryon aboard. By the time symptoms appeared, the ships would have docked at the forward base. The virus would spread. Webb watched the missiles track across his display. He felt nothing. The Krydians on those ships were as dead as his family now. He had stopped feeling guilt around the 3rd month of Project Wendigo. Now there was only the mission. All 12 missiles hit. The Krydian convoy did not even have time to raise shields. Within minutes, every Krydian on those ships was infected. They would dock at the forward base as planned. Within a week, thousands of Kryans would be dead. Within 2 weeks, the base would be abandoned. A plague zone that would kill anyone who entered. Target destroyed. The tactical officer said no survivors. Good. Plot a course to intercept Point Delta. The transport convoy should arrive there in 6 hours. We will hit them too. This was how humanity fought now. Strike from shadows. Kill and disappear. Spread disease and terror. Make the Krydians afraid of every supply ship, every convoy, every moment of peace. Over the next 3 months, humanity struck again and again. They hit Krydian supply lines across 6 systems. They deployed Reaper on 4 occupied colony worlds. They seeded agricultural worlds with self-replicating nanomachines that turned fertile soil into toxic sludge. Over the course of weeks, they sent Reaver teams to conduct raids on Krydian stations, killing everyone aboard and leaving messages painted in blood. Director Park ran the intelligence operations from a hidden command center. She coordinated human spy networks, analyzed Krythian communications, and identified targets. She also ran the psychological warfare division. Humanity broadcast its atrocities. Every virus deployment, every raid, every act of brutality was recorded and transmitted across Cryon communication networks. They wanted the Krydians to see what was coming. They wanted them to be afraid. One particular broadcast became infamous. Reaver Team 7 had boarded a Krydian diplomatic vessel traveling between systems. The ship carried 4,000 Krydians, including important political figures and their families. Team 7 methodically killed everyone on board. It took 8 hours. They made sure to record it all. Then they painted a message on the ship's main view screen in Krydian blood. You taught us well. Thank you for the lesson. They sent the ship back to Krydian space on autopilot, full of corpses. The Krydian response to the broadcast was intercepted by Park's intelligence teams. Panic, confusion, fear. Good. Let them be afraid. Not everyone agreed with what humanity was becoming. Captain Reeves, who had abstained from the original vote, led a small faction of humans who believed they were going too far. She sent a message to Admiral Webb. We are becoming worse than them, she said in the recording. The Krydians came to exterminate us because they saw us as pests. Now we are proving them right. We are using weapons that violate every moral code humanity ever created. We are killing civilians. We are spreading plagues. We are torturing prisoners. When did we decide that survival justified becoming evil? Webb listened to the message in his private quarters. He poured himself a drink, something he had been doing more often lately. Then he recorded his response. Captain Reeves, I understand your concerns. I share them. Every day I wake up and see a monster in the mirror, but I also see a human that is more than the Krydians were willing to let us be. They came to end our species. Every human alive today exists because we were willing to fight dirty. You call it evil, I call it survival. History can judge us, but there has to be a humanity left for history to judge. Webb out. He deleted Reeves from his contact list. There was no room for dissent. Not now. In the wreckage of what used to be human space, the Krydian forces began to realize they had a problem. Warp Prime Thulkar received reports of supply disruptions, plague outbreaks, and mysterious raids. His subordinates asked for additional forces to secure supply lines. He authorized them, pulling ships from other operations. But the attacks continued. Wherever the Krydians went, humans struck from the shadows. They were like a disease impossible to pin down. always finding new ways to hurt their enemy. Morale among Critian troops began to drop. Soldiers who had signed up for an easy extermination campaign found themselves facing an enemy that refused to die and fought with nightmarish cruelty. Thar sent a message to Critian High Command, requesting additional resources and authorization to use more extreme measures. He received a response from the Hegemony Council. They had intercepted human broadcasts showing the atrocities humanity was committing. The message was simple: contain and eliminate the human remnants by any means necessary. The infestation must be purged. Thar began to understand what his forces were truly facing. Not a defeated species begging for mercy. Not primitive aliens who would accept extinction. He was facing humans who had embraced every dark impulse their species had ever suppressed. He was facing an enemy that was willing to become monsters to survive. For the first time since the war began, Warp Prime Tolkar felt something he had not expected. Fear. Not for himself, but for what his decision to exterminate humanity might have awakened. The humans were no longer prey. They had become predators, and they were hunting his people in the dark. 1 year into the war, humanity emerged from the shadows with a fleet rebuilt for revenge. The construction yards hidden in dead systems had been working without rest. Human engineers, many of them civilian volunteers who had lost everything, built ships at a pace that should have been impossible. They worked 18-hour shifts. They used material scavenged from destroyed human stations. They incorporated Critan technology, stripped from captured vessels. The result was a fleet unlike anything humanity had fielded before. These were not exploration vessels or peaceful traders. Every ship was a weapon designed to kill Cryans as efficiently as possible. The hulls were black, absorbing sensor sweeps. The weapons were brutal: railguns, plasma cannons, and most terrifying of all, delivery systems for humanity's growing arsenal of bioweapons. Admiral Webb stood in the war room of humanity's new flagship, the Reckoning. Around him, holographic displays showed the disposition of both human and Critan forces. The balance had shifted. Humanity now had 200 ships, not enough to match the Critians in direct combat, but enough to hurt them badly. Targets, Webb asked. General Okoy pulled up a star chart. Red dots marked Critan-held systems. Intelligence has identified 3 priority targets. First, the supply hub at Creole. 40% of Critian supplies in this sector flow through that system. Second, the shipyard at Thenex. They are building reinforcements there. Third, Critia Prime itself. Everyone in the room went quiet at the last target. Critia Prime, the Critian homeworld. Population 2.4 billion. The heart of the hegemony. Director Park spoke. We have enough Reaper Mark V to deploy on Critia Prime. The delivery system is ready. We could launch within a week. The death toll? Webb asked, though he knew the answer. Total. The virus would spread across the planet within a month. 98% mortality rate. The remaining 2% would be so damaged they could not maintain their civilization. It would be the end of the Cryan species. Scholar Singh, who had voted against Project Wendigo but remained on the council, stood up. His hands shook. We would be doing exactly what they tried to do to us. We would be committing genocide. Yes, Chino said simply, and they would deserve it. Would they? Singh's voice rose. Every civilian on that planet, every child. They did not attack Earth. Their leaders did. Their military did. If we kill them all, we become exactly what the galaxy thinks we are. Monsters who deserve to die. Webb listened to the argument that followed. It went on for 2 hours. Okoy argued for total war, pointing out that every living Crit was a potential future threat. Chen agreed, citing his doctrine of leaving no enemies alive to regroup. Park was more cautious, noting that genocide might turn the rest of the galaxy actively against humanity. Captain Reeves, who had been allowed back into command despite her earlier objections, was the most vocal in opposition. If we do this, we prove the Galactic Council right. We prove that might makes right, and that the strong can exterminate the weak. We become the evil we are fighting. Webb made the decision. We will not hit Critia Prime yet. First, we hurt them everywhere else. We show them what humanity can do. We make them afraid. And if they do not sue for peace, if they continue trying to exterminate us, then we will consider the final option. But genocide will be our last choice, not our first. It was not mercy. It was strategy. Webb wanted the Krytians to know that humanity could end them, but was choosing not to. For now, fear was a better weapon than death sometimes. The campaign began with the attack on Kraval. 50 human ships hit the system simultaneously from 3 directions. The Krytian defense fleet, expecting attacks from humans skulking in the shadows, was unprepared for direct assault. The battle lasted 4 hours. Humanity lost 8 ships. The Krytians lost 22, including their main supply depot. Before leaving, Webb ordered the orbital bombardment of the depot's planetary facility. The kinetic weapons fell like the ones that had destroyed Earth. The facility was annihilated. So was the surrounding area, including a Krytian civilian settlement of 40,000. Webb watched it happen from the Reckoning's bridge. He felt nothing. 40,000 Krytians dead. A small payment on the debt of 18 billion humans. The second strike hit the shipyard at Thrix. This was a Reaver operation. 500 of Chen's modified soldiers were deployed via stealth insertion pods. They breached the shipyard's hull in 17 locations and began killing. Reavers moved through the facility like death itself. They were faster than Krytians, stronger than they should be, and completely without mercy. The shipyard had a security force of 2,000 Krytian soldiers. The Reavers killed them all in 3 hours. Then they moved to the civilian sections where Krytian workers and their families lived. The orders were clear: total elimination, no survivors to rebuild the facility. Reaver team leader Corvus, formerly Sergeant James Corvus of the Marine Corps, led his squad through the habitat modules. They found Krytian families hiding in their quarters, adults shielding their young. It did not matter. The Reavers killed them all. Quick, efficient, and thorough. Corvus did not feel anything as he executed his mission. The psychological conditioning had removed his ability to see Krytians as people. They were targets, objectives, threats to humanity that needed to be eliminated. His squad moved through the habitat modules like exterminators clearing an infestation. When they finished, 6,000 Krytians were dead. The shipyard was rigged with explosives. As the Reavers extracted via their insertion pods, the facility detonated in a chain reaction that lit up the night sky of the moon it orbited. The footage was recorded and broadcast. Humanity wanted the Krytians to see. The third major operation was more subtle, but potentially more devastating. Dr. Yamada had developed a new weapon called Symphony. It was not a virus. It was a neural agent, delivered via nanomachines. Once in a Krythian system, the nanomachines migrated to the brain and began overstimulating pain receptors. Death from Symphony took 3 days, but unlike Reaper, the victim remained conscious throughout. Their nervous system would fire constantly, making them feel like they were burning alive from the inside. They would beg for death. They would scream until their throats tore, and there was no cure, no way to stop it. Once the nanomachines were in place, Yamada had designed it specifically to break Krytian morale. She wanted them to hear the screams of their infected comrades. She wanted them to know that humans could kill them in ways that made death a mercy. Symphony was deployed on 3 Krytian military bases. The delivery system was atmospheric seeding from orbit, invisible, undetectable until symptoms began. Within 48 hours, every Krytian on those bases was infected. 15,000 soldiers. They did not die quickly. Human intelligence teams monitored Krytian communications during the outbreak. The desperation in those transmissions was exactly what Yamada had wanted. Krytian officers begging for medical support, soldiers pleading to be euthanized, reports of infected Krytians trying to kill themselves only to discover the nanomachines kept them alive and conscious. Director Park compiled the intelligence reports and presented them to the Remnant Council. Enemy morale is collapsing in affected sectors. We are seeing increased desertion rates, refusing of orders, and psychological breakdowns among Krytian forces. The fear is spreading. Good, Shenzhou said. Fear is what we need. A terrified enemy makes mistakes. The campaign continued for 6 months. Humanity struck again and again at Kythian targets across 8 systems. Each attack was documented and broadcast. Each new weapon was deployed with maximum psychological impact. The message was clear. Humanity would stop at nothing to survive. But the war was changing in ways that went beyond tactical victories. The galaxy was watching, and not everyone liked what they saw. Ambassador Venoch of the Collective, a species of aquatic beings known for their philosophy and art, sent a message to both the Cryan hegemony and humanity. The Galactic Council had authorized its broadcast. Reno's translated words were measured, but concerned. The Council has observed the conflict between the Cryan hegemony and humanity with growing alarm. The Cryans initiated an act of genocide against a sentient species. This was morally wrong, but legally permitted under current galactic law, which recognizes the right of species to compete for survival. However, humanity's response has introduced tactics and weapons that violate standards of civilized warfare that have been maintained for millennia. Biological weapons torture, the targeting of civilians, the use of weapons designed specifically to maximize suffering rather than achieve military objectives. These actions are disturbing to observe. We are not intervening, but we are watching, and we are afraid, not just of the Cridians, but of what humanity is becoming. Webb listened to the message in his quarters. He poured another drink. The bottle was half empty. He had been drinking more lately, not enough to impair his judgment, but enough to quiet the voices in his head, the voices that sounded like Maria and his children, asking him if this was what they would have wanted. He recorded a response, knowing it would be broadcast across the galaxy. Ambassador Venoch, you say you are afraid of what humanity is becoming. Good. Be afraid. Where was this fear when the Cridians were exterminating us? Where was the Galactic Council when 18 billion humans died begging for help? You speak of civilized warfare. The Corinthians taught us that there is no such thing. There is only survival or extinction. We chose survival. Every weapon we use, every tactic we employ, every line we cross, is a response to what was done to us. You created this version of humanity through your inaction. You want to know what humans are? We are the species that was nearly destroyed and chose to rise from the ashes as something you fear. We did not start this war, but we will end it. And if that requires becoming monsters, so be it. The galaxy had a choice. You could have helped us when we were victims. Now you will deal with us as we are. Remember that you made this choice. The message was broadcast throughout the galaxy. Reactions were mixed. Some species expressed sympathy for humanity's position. Others called for intervention against both the Cryans and humans. Most simply watched and waited to see who would win. On Cridia Prime, Warp Prime Thalar received a summon from the Hegemony Council. He traveled to the capital city, where the highest leaders of Cridian civilization gathered. The council chamber was massive, designed to awe and intimidate. It did not work on Thulkar. He had seen too much death to be impressed by architecture. The Supreme Coordinator, a Cridian who had held power for 3 decades, addressed him. Warp Prime, you assured us that the human extermination would be swift and complete. It has been 1 year. Not only are humans still alive, but they are actively destroying our forces and facilities. Explain. Tolkar stood at attention. Supreme Coordinator, the humans are not fighting as expected. They have abandoned their moral constraints and are employing tactics that we did not anticipate. They use biological weapons, suicide attacks, and psychological warfare. They target civilians to break our will. They are not fighting to win battles. They are fighting to make us fear them. Are they succeeding? Tulkar paused. Honesty or politics? He chose honesty. Yes, Supreme Coordinator. Our forces are demoralized. Supply lines are constantly under attack. Plague outbreaks on our forward bases have killed thousands. The humans broadcast their atrocities to ensure our soldiers see what awaits them. Morale is at critical lows. What do you recommend? We have 2 options. First, commit significantly more resources to the extermination. Bring in reinforcements from the core worlds. Accept higher casualties and pursue the humans into whatever dark places they hide. Second, negotiate a ceasefire and allow humanity to survive in whatever form they can manage. The council erupted in argument. Some demanded total victory. Others questioned whether continuing the war was worth the cost. The humans had proven more difficult to exterminate than anticipated, and the collateral damage to Cridian society was mounting. The Supreme Coordinator called for silence. War Prime Thulkar, your assessment of human capabilities. They cannot defeat us in a conventional war. We still have superior numbers and technology, but they can make victory so costly that it destroys us. They have already demonstrated they possess the capability to deploy weapons of mass destruction against our home world. Our intelligence suggests they have not done so yet by choice, not inability. They are showing restraint to offer us a path to peace. You believe the humans want peace. I believe humans want survival. And they have learned that sometimes survival requires others to fear you more than they hate you. They have become what they needed to be to survive, something we should have feared from the beginning. The council debated for 6 hours. In the end, they made a decision that would shock the galaxy. The Cridian hegemony, proud conquerors who had never surrendered in their history, would offer humanity a ceasefire. The message reached Admiral Webb 3 days later. It was formal and cold, lacking the arrogance of previous Cridian communications. It proposed a meeting on neutral ground to discuss terms. Webb called an emergency session of the Remnant Council. They read the message together in silence. Chino spoke first. It is a trap. They want to lure us into negotiations and then attack. Maybe, Director Park said. But our intelligence suggests genuine dissent within Cridian leadership. They are suffering more than they show publicly. Okoye frowned. If we negotiate, we show weakness. They will rebuild and attack again. Scholar Singh, however, saw something else. If we negotiate, we prove we are still human enough to seek peace. We can set terms that protect us without requiring mutual extinction. Webb looked at each of them. Chen, if we meet them, what is your assessment of Reaver readiness for a decapitation strike? We can kill their entire negotiating team and any security forces they bring. If it is a trap, we spring it first. Park, what intelligence do we have on Cridian sincerity? Mixed signals. Some factions want peace. Others want revenge for what we have done. It could go either way. Webb made his decision. We meet them, but we bring Reavers as security. We bring every advantage we have. And if they betray us, we finish what we started. He sent a response accepting the meeting. The location would be a neutral Galactic Council station. The date was set for 3 weeks hence. Webb spent those weeks preparing for both peace and treachery. He did not trust the Cridians, but he also knew that humanity could not sustain this war forever. They had become monsters to survive, but monsters could not build a future. At some point, if humanity won, they would have to remember how to be human again. He was not sure they could, not after everything they had done. But maybe, just maybe, the Cridians' offer of peace would give them the chance to try. The neutral station hung in the void between Cridian and human space, a massive construct built by the Galactic Council for diplomatic meetings. It was old, dating back centuries before humanity had discovered faster-than-light travel. The architecture was alien in the truest sense, designed to accommodate dozens of different species. Admiral Marcus Webb arrived aboard the Reckoning with an escort of 12 warships. Overkill for a peace conference, but Webb did not believe in taking chances. Hidden in the holds of those ships were 500 Reavers, ready to deploy if negotiations turned into a massacre. In the Reckoning weapons bays, 6 missiles tipped with Reaper Mark VAT ready for launch. If the Cridians betrayed them, Webb would ensure they paid for it. The Cridian delegation arrived in similar force. War Prime Tholar commanded their contingent, bringing his own warships and security forces. Both sides eyed each other across the gulf of space, with mutual distrust and barely concealed hatred. The conference room was circular, with a table that could accommodate multiple species. Environmental controls kept the atmosphere breathable for both humans and Crits. Galactic Council representatives would observe but not participate. This was between humanity and the hegemony. Webb entered with a small delegation. General Okoye, Director Park, and Scholar Singh. Chino remained on the Reckoning commanding the Reavers. If Webb gave the signal, this station would become a battlefield. The Cridians entered from the opposite door. Thar stood nearly 3 meters tall, his forearms adorned with military honors. His face was predatory, designed by evolution to be frightening. But Webb saw something in his eyes he had not expected. Weariness. With Tholar was Scholar Matriarch, an older Cridian who carried herself with dignity. She had been a voice of moderation in Cridian society. Webb's intelligence report said she had opposed the extermination, but been overruled. Now she was here to clean up the mess. They sat. The silence stretched. Finally, Nara spoke through a translator device. "Admiral Webb, we are here because continuing this war serves neither species. The Cridian hegemony acknowledges that humanity has proven more resilient than anticipated. We propose a cessation of hostilities and negotiated boundaries." Webb leaned back in his chair. "You came to exterminate us. 18 billion humans died, and now you want to negotiate because we hurt you back." Thar's translator conveyed his response. Yes. The bluntness was surprising. Webb had expected lies or justifications, not simple honesty. "We made a mistake," Tulkar continued. "We believed humanity was weak. We believed your ethics made you easy prey. We were wrong. You proved willing to do whatever necessary to survive. You became something we could not anticipate. Now we have a choice. Continue fighting until both our species are damaged beyond recovery, or find a way to coexist." Okoye leaned forward. "Why should we trust you? You could rebuild and attack again in 5 years. You should not trust us," Vanara said, "just as we cannot trust you. But we can create agreements backed by force, demilitarized zones, mutual inspection protocols, harsh penalties for aggression from either side." Director Park had prepared for this. She pulled up holographic displays showing human proposals, reparations, territory, technology sharing, war crimes tribunals. The demands were extensive. The negotiations went on for 3 days. Both sides argued threatened and gradually found compromises. The Cridians would pay reparations, limited but meaningful. They would recognize human sovereignty over reclaimed territories. They would submit to inspections to ensure no genocide weapons were being prepared. Humanity would agree to similar inspections. They would dismantle their bioweapon stockpiles, except for a small arsenal held in reserve under international supervision. They would limit their fleet size. They would not seek revenge attacks on Cridian civilians. On the 4th day, as they neared a final agreement, Nara asked to speak privately with Webb. He agreed, though he kept his security detail close. They met in a smaller chamber, with only a translator present. Nara looked at Webb with eyes that had seen too much death. "Admiral, may I speak honestly, please? What you did to us was terrible. The biological weapons, the attacks on civilians, the torture. We have documentation of atrocities that violate every standard of warfare." "Yes," Webb said he would not deny it. "And what you did to us was genocide. You started a war of extermination. We finished it." "Did you?" Belnara gestured to the station around them. "If you had finished it, my species would be extinct. But we are here. You chose to stop. Why?" Webb was silent for a long moment. He thought of Chen Xiao, who had argued for complete extermination. He thought of the vote to deploy Reaper on Cridia Prime, which had been narrowly defeated. He thought of all the Cridian children who were alive, because humanity had chosen restraint at the last moment. Because he said slowly, "If we had killed you all, we would have proven you right. We would have become the monsters you said we were. We did terrible things. I will carry the guilt of that until I die. But we stopped short of becoming you." Belnara nodded. "The Galactic Council will judge both our species harshly. They will say the Cridians tried to commit genocide and the humans nearly succeeded in returning the favor. They will fear us both." "Let them," Webb said. "Fear might make them think twice before letting another genocide happen through inaction." "There is something you should know," Belnara said. "The evidence of your war crimes. The Galactic Council has been collecting it. Videos of your biological weapon attacks, testimonies from survivors, records of your torture programs. They are building a case." Webb felt cold. A case for what? To hold humanity accountable. There are factions in the Council who believe that your response, while understandable, crossed lines that cannot be ignored. They want tribunals. They want your leadership to stand trial for crimes against sentient life. After they did nothing to stop the Corians from starting this. Yes, the Council is frightened of what humanity became. They see you as a species that might do to them what you did to us if provoked. Webb stood and walked to the viewport. Outside, stars burned cold and distant. "Let them try. We will not apologize for surviving. We will not hand over our people to stand trial for doing what was necessary." "I thought you might say that," Balara said. which is why I am telling you this. When we conclude negotiations, the Council will move against you, not militarily, but legally and economically. They will isolate humanity, sanction you, make you perish. Why tell me this? We are your enemies. Because Belnar said softly, my people committed genocide, and you responded with nearly equal horror. If there are trials, the Cridians should stand beside you. We are both guilty. The Council wants to punish only humanity, because punishing the Cryan hegemony is politically difficult. It is not justice. It is convenience. Webb turned to look at her. This Cridian, who had lost family to human bioweapons, who had every reason to hate humanity, was warning him about political persecution. The galaxy was more complicated than he had thought. What do you suggest? Stand together, not as allies, but as mutual defendants. The Council cannot hold humanity accountable without holding the Cridians equally accountable. Force them to confront the entire war, not just your response to it. It will be politically difficult for them. They may back down. They returned to the main negotiating chamber. Over the next 2 days, they finalized an agreement. Both species would withdraw to define territories. Reparations would flow both ways, acknowledging harm done by both sides. A joint commission would investigate war crimes from both sides. Neither species would be subject to Council judgment without the other. The agreement was imperfect. It left wounds unhealed, but it ended the war. On the final day, as both delegations prepared to sign the accord, the Galactic Council representatives entered the chamber. Ambassador Voch led them. His translated speech was carefully neutral, but carried threat. The Council has observed these negotiations. We approve of the cessation of hostilities. However, we must address the matter of the weapons and tactics employed by both sides, particularly by humanity. The use of biological weapons, designed to maximize suffering, the targeting of civilian populations, the torture of prisoners. These actions violate standards that civilized species have maintained for millennia. Webb stood. Ambassador, where were these standards when the Cryans dropped kinetic weapons on our cities? When they massacred human civilians by the billions? The Cridian actions were wrong, Vino said. But your response was disproportionate. You created weapons of unimaginable cruelty. You broadcast your atrocities as psychological warfare. You became something the galaxy must fear. Good, Webb said. Let the galaxy fear us. You had the power to stop a genocide and did nothing. You hid behind non-inference while 18 billion humans died. We learned that the galaxy's laws only protect you if you are strong enough to protect yourself. We became strong. If that makes you uncomfortable, remember that you created this version of humanity through your cowardice. The chamber erupted in argument. Council representatives protested. Cridian delegates pointed out their own crimes. Human delegates defended their actions. It went on for hours, achieving nothing except demonstrating that the galaxy had no moral authority to judge either species. Finally, Scholar Singh spoke. His voice was quiet but carried. This war began because the Cridians believed might made right. They believed the strong could exterminate the weak without consequence. The Council allowed it. Humanity proved them wrong by becoming strong enough to threaten mutual destruction. But if the lesson of this war is simply that power is all that matters, then we have learned nothing. The real question is, what comes next? Do we create a galaxy where this can never happen again? Or do we simply wait for the next war between species who feel threatened? His words hung in the air. No one had an answer. The signing ceremony was brief and formal. Webb and Tholar affixed their marks to the treaty. No handshakes, no words of friendship, just acknowledgement that continuing the war would destroy both species. As Webb prepared to leave the station, Director Park pulled him aside. Admiral, we have a problem. Shenzhou has refused the order to stand down the Reaver program. He and his forces have left the fleet. Webb felt his stomach drop. Where did they go? Unknown. He sent one message. It said, "You chose mercy. I choose vigilance. The galaxy will never threaten humanity again while I exist." Webb realized what had happened. The Reavers, 50,000 humans conditioned for violence and stripped of empathy, had gone rogue. They had become a force that answered to no one. Chenjo had taken them into deep space to become humanity's dark defenders, whether humanity wanted them or not. Can we find them? Not if they do not want to be found. The Reavers were trained for stealth operations. They could hide for decades. Webb sat down heavily. They had won the war. They had negotiated peace. But they had created something that could not be controlled. The Reavers would continue their mission, defending humanity through terror and violence, regardless of treaties or moral concerns. The return to human space took a week. When Webb arrived at the rebuilt Earth station, he found crowds waiting. Humanity had survived. Against impossible odds, through terrible choices, they had survived. Emma Reeves, a young officer who had opposed many of Webb's decisions, approached him. Admiral, there are people who want you tried for war crimes. There are also people who want to build statues of you. Which do you deserve? Webb looked at her. Both and neither. I did what I thought necessary to save our species. History will judge whether I was right. I will spend the rest of my life judging myself. In his quarters that night, Webb recorded a final message, not for broadcast, but for history, for whoever would come after and try to understand what humanity had become. We were pushed to the edge of extinction. We responded by becoming the thing we feared most, monsters. We used weapons that should never have been created. We killed civilians. We spread plagues. We tortured and murdered in the name of survival. Were we right? I do not know. We survived. That is all I can say with certainty. Humanity exists because we were willing to cross lines that should not be crossed. If you are watching this from a future where humanity thrives, remember what it cost. Remember the 18 billion who died in the initial attack. Remember the 31 billion Koreans who died in our response. Remember that we had to become devils to survive, and remember that we chose to stop. At the end, when we had the power to exterminate our enemy completely, we chose not to. That choice, more than any victory, is what makes us human. I hope your generation never has to make the choices we made. I hope you never have to ask yourself if survival justifies horror. But if you do face that choice, remember us. Remember what we did and what it cost our souls. We became monsters so you would not have to honor that by being better than we were. Webb ended the recording and looked out at Earth below. The planet was healing slowly, painfully, but healing. Life would continue, but the scars would never fully fade. And somewhere in the darkness between the stars, Chino and his Reavers waited, watching, ensuring that no species would ever again threaten humanity. The war was over, but its consequences had just begun. 20 years after the war ended, Marcus Webb lived in a small house, overlooking what used to be Paulo. The city had been rebuilt, though it looked different now. The architecture mixed old human styles with new designs that incorporated lessons learned from alien engineering. It was beautiful, in a way that carried ghosts. Webb was 73 years old. His hair had gone completely white. His hands shook sometimes, a combination of age and old injuries from the war. He lived alone. Most days he tended his garden where flowers grew alongside plants from other worlds. In the center of the garden was a memorial wall. On it were carved names, 18 billion of them, as many as would fit. The rest existed in a database that anyone could access. Every human who died in the initial Korean attack. Every Korean who died in humanity's response. He had been working on the wall for 15 years. He would not finish in his lifetime. That was intentional. The work was the point. A visitor arrived in the afternoon. Webb heard the transport land and recognized the signature. He had been expecting this visit for some time. Scholar matriarch Velnara approached slowly, her forearms moving carefully. She was old too now by Krydian standards. They had been corresponding for years. Two old warriors trying to make sense of what they had done. Admiral Webb, she said. The translator she wore was newer, better than the wartime models. Her voice sounded almost natural. Just Marcus now, he said. I retired from the military 12 years ago. Can I offer you something to drink? They sat on his porch, looking out over the rebuilt city. Krydian physiology was different from human, but Nara could tolerate Earth atmosphere for a few hours with only minor discomfort. She sipped the water he offered and studied the memorial wall. You have been working on this for a long time, she said. Yes, I add names when I can. There are too many, but I try. The Krydian names too. Why? Webb looked at his hands. Because they were people, soldiers following orders, civilians who had no say in what their government did, children who died because of what we released. If I am going to carry the guilt, I need to acknowledge all of it. Nara was quiet for a time. Then she said, "My people have similar memorials now. We list human names, the ones we killed. It is our penance. Does it help? No, but we do it anyway." They sat in companionable silence. Two old enemies, who had become something like friends through shared guilt. "I came to tell you something," said the Galactic Council is making a decision about Earth's membership application. After 20 years of deliberation, they are close to a vote. Humanity had applied for full council membership after the war. The process was supposed to take 5 years. It had taken 4 times that. The council was afraid of humanity, and fear made bureaucracy slow. "What is the likely outcome?" Webb asked. "They will admit you conditionally. There will be inspections, limitations on certain weapons research, required participation in mutual defense agreements. You will be members, but watched closely." "That is more than I expected. The galaxy is afraid of you," Venara said. "But they are also afraid of what happens if they reject you. You proved that humanity can be pushed to extremes. They do not want to test those extremes again." Webb smiled without humor. "So we are in the council because they fear us, not because we earned it. Is that not how most power works? The Critians dominated through strength. Humanity survived through being willing to become something terrible. The Galactic Council respects both now, though they wish they did not have to." A small child ran past Webb's garden laughing. Human child chasing something. The simple joy of it made Webb's throat tight. That child would grow up in a world where the war was history, not lived experience. That was something. "How is Dr. Yamada?" Nara asked. Webb sighed. "She works at a medical facility on Titan now, treating diseases, trying to undo some of the damage from the war. She does not speak much. The guilt weighs on her heavily. She should not bear it alone. All of us who participated carry responsibility. She created weapons that killed billions. She designed them to cause maximum suffering. That is a special kind of burden." Felnara nodded. "We have crits like that too. Scientists who designed the kinetic weapons. Soldiers who killed human children. They cannot escape what they did. Some have taken their own lives. Others try to make amends. There is no good answer." They discussed the fate of others from the war. General Okoi had become Earth's defense minister, ensuring humanity would never again be unprepared for war. Director Park ran the diplomatic corps, negotiating treaties and keeping human intelligence networks sharp. Scholar Singh had died 3 years ago, peacefully in his sleep, still believing that humanity could have found another way. And Chen Hao asked the Reaver. Webb's face darkened. "No one knows." He and his forces vanished. Sometimes there are reports a pirate fleet destroyed with excessive violence. A slave operation obliterated. Someone intervening when humans are threatened. But they stay in the shadows. Shen became what he wanted to be. Humanity's dark protector, operating outside law or morality. Do you regret creating the Reavers? Every day, we made soldiers who cannot stop being soldiers. Warriors without empathy or restraint. I created them because we needed weapons. Now, those weapons have their own agenda, and I cannot call them back. Are they a threat? Not to humanity. To everyone else, perhaps? Chen believes the galaxy will always be a threat to humanity. So, he removes threats before they materialize. It is not peace. It is just another kind of war. Belnara stood carefully, her old bones protesting. "I should return to my ship. But I wanted to ask you something, Marcus. In your honest assessment, who was worse? My people who started the genocide, or yours who nearly completed it?" Webb thought about this question. He had asked it of himself 1,000 times in the long nights when sleep would not come. "I do not think that question has an answer," he finally said. "You killed more of us initially. We killed more of you in response. You started it. We escalated it. Assigning blame is just a way to avoid the real question, which is, what do we do now? How do we make sure this never happens again? Not just between our species, but anywhere. How do we create a galaxy where survival does not require becoming monsters?" Belnara considered this. The remnant protocols were a start. She was right. One outcome of the war had been the creation of new Galactic Council rules. If any species faced extinction-level threat, intervention was now required. Not optional. Required. The Council had voted for this unanimously, frightened by what inaction had created. A start, Webb agreed, but not enough. The Council still believes in natural selection, in the strong dominating the weak. They have just added rules to avoid the worst outcomes. The underlying philosophy has not changed. Can it? Species compete for resources and territory. That is nature. Maybe. Or maybe we can be better than nature. Maybe we can choose cooperation over competition. Maybe we can build something that does not require constant fear and violence to maintain. Belnara made a sound that the translator interpreted as sad laughter. You became a philosopher in your old age, Marcus. I became a lot of things I did not expect to be. They said their goodbyes. Belnara returned to her ship. Webb went back to his garden and added 3 more names to the wall before the light faded. That evening, Emma Reeves visited. She was 42 now, a successful ambassador who had helped negotiate Humanities Council membership. She was also one of the founders of the Neverag movement, which worked to ensure humanity never forgot the lessons of the war. Marcus, she said, sitting on his porch, I came to ask you about the memorial service next week, the 20th anniversary commemoration. Yes, they want you to speak, you, and together, representing both sides. Webb had been dreading this. I do not know what to say. What do you say to a gathering that includes families of victims from both species? How do you address people whose children you killed? You tell the truth, Emma said. You do not apologize because what you did was in response to genocide. But you acknowledge the cost. You make sure everyone remembers what happens when wars escalate beyond control. And if they hate me for it, then they hate you. You can carry that too. Webb agreed to speak. He spent the next week writing and rewriting his remarks. Every version sounded wrong. Too defensive. Too apologetic. Too cold. Finally, he stopped trying to make it perfect and just wrote what he felt. The memorial service was held on restored Earth, at a site near where Espalo had been destroyed. Thousands attended in person. Billions watched across multiple species and star systems. It was the largest gathering of Critians and humans since the war ended. Webb and Nara stood together at the podium. They had agreed to speak jointly, alternating thoughts. It was Webb's idea. Showing unity between former enemies was more powerful than any individual words. Webb spoke first. 20 years ago, the Cryan hegemony attempted to exterminate humanity. 18 billion of us died in the first attacks. It was genocide, pure and simple. The Galactic Council did nothing. We were alone facing extinction. Nara continued. What the hegemony did was unforgivable. We came to your worlds as conquerors and murderers. We believed our strength gave us the right to eliminate you. We were wrong morally, ethically, and practically wrong. Webb spoke again. Humanity responded to genocide with nearly equal horror. We created biological weapons designed to maximize suffering. We killed 31 billion Critians. We targeted civilians. We used tactics that violated every moral principle we claimed to hold. We became monsters. And we deserved what came. Venara said, My people initiated this war. Everything that followed was consequence. But consequence does not erase the horror of what was done to us. Critian children died from human plagues. Our worlds were poisoned. Our people suffered deaths that were designed to be as terrible as possible. Webb looked out at the crowd. He saw human faces filled with pain. Remembering lost loved ones, he saw Critian faces just as haunted. Both our species carry scars that will never fully heal. We can argue about who was worse, but that misses the point. The point is that we nearly destroyed each other. We came within a decision, a single vote of mutual extinction. The question is not who was worse, Nara said. The question is what we learned. Did we learn that might makes right? That survival justifies any horror? Or did we learn something else? Webb paused, gathering his thoughts. I have spent 20 years trying to answer that question. I commanded forces that deployed weapons of unimaginable cruelty. I gave orders that resulted in the deaths of billions. I did these things because I believed humanity's survival required them. I still believe that. But belief does not erase guilt. I was part of the government that authorized humanity's extermination. Balara said. I opposed it, but I did not stop it. I carry the weight of 18 billion human deaths because my people did not prevent them. Guilt is not erased by opposition or regret. It simply is. Webb continued. Here is what I learned from this war. First, that species can do terrible things when threatened. Humans proved capable of horrors we thought we had left behind centuries ago. We discovered that our ethics were situational, that survival could override any moral principle. That is a truth we must face about ourselves. Critians learned similar lessons. Belnara added, we believed ourselves superior, entitled to dominate. We learned that arrogance has costs. We learned that the species you try to exterminate might prove stronger than you anticipated. We learned that might does not make right. It just makes conflict. Second, Webb said, we learned that the galaxy's systems failed. The Galactic Council allowed genocide to proceed because intervention was inconvenient. They created the conditions where we had to become monsters to survive. Any system that allows extinction events to proceed unchecked is a broken system. Balara nodded. The remnant protocols were created because of our war. Now the Council must intervene when species face extinction. It is not perfect, but it is progress. Our suffering purchased this change. Webb felt his voice catch slightly. He pushed through it. Third, and most important, we learned that stopping is possible. At the height of our power, humanity possessed the capability to render the Critian species extinct. We had the weapons. We had the targeting data. We had the justification. And we chose not to use them. Similarly, Velnara said, when offered peace, the Critian hegemony chose to accept rather than fight to mutual destruction. We could have continued the war. Our pride demanded it, but we chose survival over pride. Webb looked directly at the cameras, knowing billions were watching. That choice, the choice to stop, is what defines us now. Not the horrors we committed, but the final decision to seek peace instead of total victory. We were monsters. We did monstrous things, but we chose to stop being monsters when we had the chance. This is the lesson we must teach future generations, Velnar said. Not that war is glorious, or that survival justifies everything, but that even in the darkest moments, the choice to seek peace exists. Even when you have become something terrible, you can choose to stop. Webb spoke his final words slowly, making sure each one landed. To the humans watching, we survived, but survival came at a cost to our souls. Never forget what we did to survive. Never forget the lines we crossed, and never forget that we chose to stop. Be better than we were. Build a future where survival does not require becoming monsters, Belnara concluded. To the Critians watching, we started this war through arrogance and cruelty. We paid a terrible price. Learn from our mistake. Strength does not give you the right to dominate others. Power without wisdom leads to destruction. Honor the dead by ensuring their deaths taught us to be better. They stepped back from the podium together. The silence that followed was heavy, filled with grief and memory, and the weight of 50 billion dead. Then slowly applause began. Not celebratory, solemn, an acknowledgement of truth spoken and burden shared. After the ceremony, Webb returned to his home. He found a message waiting. It was audio only, heavily encrypted. He recognized the voice immediately. Hello, Admiral. It is Chen. Webb's hands tightened on the console. He had not heard from Chenia in 15 years. Chen's voice continued. I watched your speech. Very moving, very philosophical. You talked about choosing to stop being monsters, but you are wrong about something. We never stopped. I never stopped. Out here in the dark, the Reavers continue our mission. We protect humanity from threats before they materialize. We ensure no species ever again thinks humans are easy prey. Last month, we discovered a species planning raids on human merchant vessels. We eliminated their fleet and their leadership. 3 weeks ago, we learned of a criminal syndicate trafficking human children. We destroyed them completely. Yesterday, we intercepted communications from a minor power discussing the possibility of testing humanity's resolve. We visited them. They will not test anything now. Webb felt sick. Chen and his Reavers were still out there, still killing, still being the monsters that humanity had created. You chose to stop, Chen said. I choose to continue, because the galaxy is full of predators. And they need to know that humanity has teeth. You can have your peace and your philosophy. I will keep you safe while you sleep. Someone has to do the dark work. Someone has to be the monster. The message ended. Webb sat in silence, staring at nothing. He had tried to create a better future. He had tried to show that humanity could choose peace. But part of humanity would always be out there in the dark, doing terrible things in the name of protection. Maybe that was the truth of it. Maybe humanity needed both. The philosophers building peace, and the monsters keeping watch in the darkness. It was not a comfortable truth. But uncomfortable truths were still true. Dr. Ko Yamada stood in the medical bay of the research station on Titan, treating a Krydian patient. The patient was young, suffering from a genetic disorder. Ko worked carefully, using the same brilliant mind that had once created plagues to now heal disease. The irony was not lost on her. "Dr. Yamada," the patient said through a translator, "I know who you are. What you did during the war." Ko's hands did not stop working. "Yes. Why do you treat us after what we did to your people?" Ko finished the procedure before answering. "Because I spent years creating death. Now I try to create life. It does not balance the scales. Nothing can. But I try anyway. Do you regret it? What you did?" Ko looked at the young Krydian. "Every moment of every day. But regret does not undo it. So I work. I heal. I try to make the universe slightly less terrible than I made it. That is all I can do." The patient was quiet for a moment. "My grandfather died from your plague, the Reaper virus. It took him 3 days. The whole family watched him suffer." "I know," Ko said softly. "I designed it that way, to cause maximum fear and suffering. I'm sorry, but you would do it again, if humans were threatened with extinction again. Would she?" Ko thought about that question. The honest answer frightened her. "I do not know. I hope I never have to find out. I hope we have learned enough that such choices are never necessary again. But I am not certain, and that uncertainty is something I have to live with." The patient left after the treatment. Ko returned to her research. She was working on a cure for a rare disease that affected 3 species, including humans and Krits. It would save thousands of lives. It would not come close to balancing the billions she had killed, but she would do it anyway. Emma Reeves stood before the Galactic Council, presenting humanity's case for full membership. She was nervous, but determined. The council chamber was full of representatives from 43 species, all watching to see what humanity would say. "The question before this council is simple," Emma began. "Does humanity deserve full membership? The answer depends on what you think membership means. If it is a reward for good behavior, then no, we do not deserve it. We committed atrocities during the war. We created weapons that violated every standard of civilized warfare. We became something terrible. But if membership is about recognizing the reality of power and creating structures for peaceful coexistence, then yes, humanity deserves membership. We proved we will not accept extinction quietly. We proved we can be dangerous when threatened. And we proved we can choose peace when it is offered." Ambassador Vino of the collective spoke, "Humanity frightens us. You showed capabilities that violate our understanding of ethical limits." "Good," Emma said bluntly. "Be frightened. Use that fear to ensure you never allow another genocide to proceed unopposed. We became monsters because you abandoned us. Learn from that. Create systems where species do not have to become monsters to survive." The debate went on for hours. Species argued about humanity's nature, capabilities, and trustworthiness. Some wanted to reject humanity's application. Others wanted to admit humans, but with heavy restrictions. A few argued for full membership without conditions. In the end, the vote was close, but decisive. Humanity was admitted to the Galactic Council with conditional status. Regular inspections, weapons limitations, required participation in mutual defense agreements. It was not perfect, but it was acceptance. Emma transmitted the news to Earth. Humanity was no longer isolated. They were part of the galactic community, watched carefully, but included. That night, celebrations erupted across human space. People danced in the streets, relieved that humanity had finally been accepted. But Emma could not celebrate. She knew the truth. Humanity was accepted because the galaxy feared them. That was not the same as being welcomed. It was just recognition of reality. Marcus Webb watched the celebrations from his porch. He did not join them. Velnar sent him a message. "Congratulations. Your species is officially part of the galactic community. What will you do with this opportunity?" Webb thought about that question. What would humanity do? They could try to be better. They could work toward a galaxy where survival did not require horror. Or they could rest on their fearsome reputation, using threat and intimidation to protect themselves. He hoped for the first. He expected elements of both. He wrote his response. "We will try to be worthy of the chance we have been given. We will try to build instead of destroy. We will try to remember the lessons paid for in blood. But we will never forget that the galaxy abandoned us once. We will never again be weak enough that our survival depends on others' mercy. We will be partners, but we will be dangerous partners. The galaxy will have to accept both parts of us." Nara's response came quickly. "That is all any of us can do. Be better while remaining strong enough to survive. It is not a perfect balance, but it is honest." Webb looked at his memorial wall. In the fading light, the names seemed to glow. 18 billion humans, 31 billion crits, 50 billion reasons to never repeat the mistakes of the past, but also 50 billion reminders of what species could do when pushed to extremes. Humanity had proven capable of unimaginable cruelty. That capability did not disappear with peace treaties. It remained dormant, waiting in the genetic and cultural memory of the species. Webb hoped future generations would never need to access that capacity for violence. But he knew better than to count on it. The galaxy was vast and full of unknowns. Humanity would face new threats, new challenges, new choices between survival and morality. All he could do was leave them the truth, the complete truth, not sanitized or justified. He continued his work on the memorial wall, adding names one by one. When he died, others would continue the work. The memorial would grow, a permanent reminder of what happened when a species was pushed to choose between extinction and becoming monsters. Humanity had chosen to become monsters. They had also chosen to stop being monsters. Both truths had to be remembered. Both were part of who humans were now. The stars burned above Earth, cold and distant, and full of potential threats and potential friends. Humanity moved forward into that uncertain future, carrying the weight of 50 billion dead, the memory of necessary evil, and the hope that they could be better than the worst version of themselves. It would have to be enough. In the darkness between stars, Chino and his reavers patrolled the void. They were humanity's shadow, the part that could not stop being monsters. They protected their species in ways that philosophers could never acknowledge. They did the dark work that peace required. On Earth and its colonies, children grew up learning about the war in schools. They learned about the genocide and humanity's response. They learned about the terrible choices their ancestors made. And they learned that those ancestors had chosen peace when they could have chosen extermination. What those children would become, what humanity would become, remained to be seen. The capacity for both great good and great evil existed within the species. The future would show which capacity dominated. Marcus Webb added 3 more names to his memorial wall as the sun set. He would add more tomorrow and the day after. For as long as he lived, it was penance. It was remembrance. It was warning. It was all he could offer to the 50 billion dead. The promise that they would not be forgotten, and that humanity would try to ensure their deaths, meant something. In the end, that was the answer to genocide. Not glory, not justification, just memory, and the determination to be better than the worst moments, while remaining strong enough to survive the next threat. Humanity had wanted to be explorers, artists, philosophers. They had been forced to become monsters. Now they would try to be both, strong enough to defend themselves and wise enough to know when not to. The galaxy would watch, the galaxy would judge, and humanity would continue carrying its scars and its lessons, trying to build a future worthy of those who had died.